Here we go, and we are rolling as the Vols are victorious and plenty to talk about. What a night for VFL. VFL, one heck of a player as Joshua Dobbs just absolutely goes out and does pretty much something historical if you watch him and his highlights and what he was able to do. And admittedly didn't know some of the players' names. Spencer Riley will join us each and every Monday. Looking forward to that. We have SEC Power Rankings and our Week 10 recap overall. Now, starting, we got to talk with Caleb Calhoun for just a second because, Caleb, you were certain, and I hope you're doing well, sir.
I'm doing great. Happy Monday.
Yes, happy Monday. And you were certain that Tennessee would not cover. Was that the prediction?
I was not as certain as a week. I was not as certain as a week before. I didn't know, but I did do the bet that Tennessee would not cover. So, but I also said I wouldn't commit to the bet unless we committed to something for you, and we never did. So I'm not following through on my end.
Okay, well, I just thought about perhaps over the weekend, one of us could wear tiara during the picks. And since you lost, I thought you would want to kick that off.
I mean, I don't mind doing it because I lost that one. But if y'all follow me over the weekend, I slayed on my bets, okay? I went 4-1 on my bets of the week. I went like 15-6 overall. I absolutely dominated. I'll wear a tiara just to say that I am bejeweled because I raked in some money this past weekend.
Okay, so we're going to get to Joshua Dobbs. We're going to get to the Torchbearers report card and more. Spencer Riley, former Vol, will join us. VFL Spencer a little bit later at center, and he will be the center of attention later in the program. But let's start with what Vegas thinks of the Vols and Missouri. A 1.5 to pick them. Let's go back, I guess, a week ago, because nobody's surprised that Tennessee was able to win easily against UConn. So we're not dealing really with any new information. Maybe the disparagement between Tennessee and UConn was a little bit different in your eyes, but it wasn't to me. I didn't really learn that much more about either team after the game because I think Tennessee is so much better. So I thought last week that Tennessee would probably be a 3 or 4 point favorite, if I remember correctly. And were you not a little higher? Or am I misremembering? I'm trying to figure out this 1.5.
No, I think we were on the same boat. It'd be about 3 to 4 points.
Okay. Well, so are you surprised it's 1.5 to pick them?
No, because in one of the gambling moves I got right, I think Vegas was actually surprised by how well Missouri played Georgia. Missouri was 15.5 point underdogs in that game, and they lost by 9. And quite honestly, if Eli Drinkwitz didn't make the stupid decision to settle for no points at the end of the first half, and a couple other things didn't happen, that's a one possession game. And so I think they looked at that.
It was a one possession game late too, until the Missouri quarterback just makes the horrendous play of kind of throwing the ball into a crowd of people, and it's intercepted by a defensive tackle and just run the other way. But Missouri, up until that point, I'm going to give it to Missouri. You know me, I like to crack on them. I'm not a fan of Missouri, but they played hard with Georgia. And until that interception by a defensive lineman that got it down, I believe, inside the 10, Caleb, I'll give Missouri credit. They were cracking helmets. They were playing hard. They believed they could win despite being down at 6 points, I believe, at the time that I was watching. And that's a tougher football team than it was last year. When we talked about them getting better, kind of thought of them along the lines of maybe figuring some things out. But those guys play to believe, and I give them credit for that.
Yeah, they do. They have they fight hard. Remember at the beginning of the year, I would warn you because I had said last year they were in about 6 of they went 7-6, but they should have won 4 of the games they lost, including the Georgia game last year. And those losses have turned into wins this year because they're significantly better and they're putting up better fights. I mean, coming off a bye, playing Georgia on the road, I think they played very, very well. There's plenty of concern about Georgia that we could talk about that we'll get into also. But yeah, so I think this line is Vegas still thinks Tennessee's better. They're pleasantly surprised about Missouri, but they also think it was close largely because Missouri had the benefit of coming off a bye, and they think it's a lot of what Georgia didn't do more than what Missouri did do. And so that's why I think they still have Tennessee favored. Tennessee's now number 12 in the coaches poll, number 14 in the AP poll. I think they're the highest ranked 2-loss team right now overall. I could be wrong on that, but I think Tennessee is the most. I think Tennessee is the highest ranked 2-loss team. They're kind of flirting with that with maybe Oregon State. It's like them and Oregon State are kind of together. So there's a lot of respect out there for Tennessee right now. Oregon State and Utah. Oregon State and Utah are higher than Tennessee in the AP poll, and Tennessee is the highest ranked of the 2-loss teams in the coaches poll right now. So
We appreciate David Michael saying, Dave, Caleb, OTH, thanks for being the best outlet on Vols content. Lots to talk about. Great seeing Nico. We are winning the East. So Tennessee does get to see a little bit of Nico. I don't know that it affects their ranking at all. But as far as being up to 14 in the AP poll, 12 in the coaches poll, I really have no argument either way. I mean, we can nitpick, take one team here and one team there that Tennessee should be ahead of or behind. But to me, they feel like a top, I'm going to say top 12 to 14 team. And that's a team that's on the bubble to make the playoff next year.
yeah, they absolutely do. And honestly, the one I would make a case for, I would argue they should be ahead of Oregon State. But Oregon State did beat Utah. Utah did beat Florida. Florida did beat Tennessee. So maybe that's where they're going with that. But I could see the argument either way with those two. I think you're right. They see Tennessee as a fringe playoff team. And by the way, this is 12 and 14 with 3 weeks to go in November and a lot of games coming up. And should Tennessee win out, I mean, that's a tall order, but it's not impossible. But the way they're playing right now, I think you and I both agree, Dave, this Tennessee team is not the Tennessee team that lost to Florida. It's not even close to the Tennessee team that beat Texas A&M. We never would have thought that team had a shot against Georgia. This one does.
Let me ask you this. Realistic wins out, which isn't really winning out because that would be a loss to Georgia, right? Because they're going to be underdogs to Georgia. So realistic win out, which is a loss to Georgia, which isn't a win out. Where does Tennessee finish now that we're looking at where we're looking? And that's a top 15 program. Where would Tennessee finish? And you know what I'm going to ask you next. It's going to be where would they finish with a win against Georgia? But with a loss to Georgia, which most people would believe would be the case, where does Tennessee finish at the end of the regular season? That would be a win over Missouri and Vanderbilt.
If they lose to Georgia, I think Tennessee finishes 15-ish, right around there in the regular season. Bowl game notwithstanding, I think it's about 15-ish. I don't think they're going to drop too much. It also depends on how they play Georgia. If they go out and lose to Georgia on the final drive, they may actually move up in that. But if they lose to Georgia the way they lost last year, they're going to drop. And I think that's going to be a big deal, particularly since other teams have been playing Georgia tough. If Tennessee doesn't play them tough, it's going to be a really bad look for them. Now, to your other question, if they finish 10-2, David, they finish 10-2, they're going to be in the top 6. They're going to be in the top 6 at the end of the year. And we're all Tennessee fans will be looking at, will be like, gosh, that darn Florida game. That's what'll be in their heads, because if they finish 10-2, that Florida game will be the most costly Florida loss Tennessee ever suffered.
Oh, yes, but just because the Tennessee-Florida series was earlier in the year, so you had room to make up. So, yeah, I'll give you that. But if you looked at it in retrospect, there were teams that lost in that Florida game in the 90s that would have done much more, and they were kind of locked into a corner. Never stick baby in a corner. So, I'll agree with you, because you had time to work your way back into the conversation, right?
Yeah, well, that and the reason this one will have turned out to be so much more costly is because those Florida teams in the 90s, we can debate, but they were, I mean, you're talking two teams on par in the same tier with talent. You know what I mean? Like, I think Tennessee was better. You think those Florida teams had a little more talent, but either way, they were in the same tier. They're not in the same tier, these two teams, this year's Tennessee and Florida team. Tennessee is a significant level above Florida in talent. I mean, there's a huge gap between the two schools. So that's why I say this would be the most costly loss, because they lost to a far inferior Florida team where if they finish 10-2, that may have cost them the East, and it will have cost them a shot at the college football playoff. And that's a huge deal.
No, very good point. Okay, a couple of things to get to. The Tennessee football report card grading the Vols in a 59-3 win versus UConn. And I always ask you to do this if you don't mind. Provide a little bit of insight as to how you give these grades, because it's one thing getting an A against Alabama, it's another thing getting an A against, I don't know, UConn.
It is. It's much harder to grade, but the way I look at it is I heard this one time in sports. In real life, there's one difference between sports and real life, and because they're like football can apply to real life. But here's where there's a big difference, Dave. In real life, you don't get credit for doing what you're supposed to do. Like, you shouldn't get credit for taking care of your kids. You know what I mean? Like, you're supposed to take care of your kids.
This is the Chris Rock bit, but anyway,
right.
Go ahead.
Yes. In sports, you do get credit for doing what you're supposed to do. So if you're playing a bad team and you're supposed to blow them out, and you do blow them out, you should get the credit for that. If that makes sense. So when I'm grading Tennessee with UConn, I'm like, okay, did everybody do what they should have done? And if they do what they should have done, I'll grade them. I'll give them an A, even if I don't know if they would have gotten the A against Alabama. There was nothing more they could have done. You know what I mean? So that led to a lot of great grades. So yeah, it's the in sports, I think some like Phil Jackson was supposed to win all those championships because he had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, but he still gets credit for winning them.
You're right.
And so that's what my criteria is.
You just don't want to lose one of those to Jordan. That would be almost as newsworthy. I mean, have you ever thought about Jordan just 5-1 instead of 6-0? 6-0 sounds so much more beautiful. Let's get to the report card now, as which Joe Milton, we talked about last week. In the end, has Josh Heupel done a good job with his coaching of quarterbacks, and you can't argue against it. Your thoughts. But I'm going to go ahead and give something away. Joe Milton's going to get an A. It's brought to you in part by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Over 40 years in the real estate business there in Knoxville. And the great part about Andy Mason is that he has the best service and the prices in the biz. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. All right, let's start with Joe Milton. Gets an A. Got no argument with that. Again,
no, the quarterbacks as a whole get an A.
Oh, quarterbacks as a whole. Okay. Well, quarterbacks as a whole get an A. I got no argument with that. Again, I do have to factor in the opponent a little bit, but yeah, A, no problem.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Milton gets an A. Nico Iamaleava came in, looked really good. He gets an A. Navy Schuler completed his only attempt. And Gaston Morse and Dave's favorite quarterback, Gaston Morse, saw some good action. So they all played well.
It's not my favorite quarterback. It's becoming a thing for those that just listen for a second.
Dave Moore is his name. Dave wants to marry Gaston Moore. How does Shonda feel about that, Dave?
She's scared. Running backs get an A+. That you start off with an 82-yard touchdown run on the game's second drive. You establish that you have controlled the football field quite easily. Wide receivers, A+. Will anybody on the offensive board not get an A? Stop me if you want to grab onto one of these. Tight ends, A+ as well. Our guy Jacob Warren, who will be on the Vol report, we decided to push him back just a little bit. He'll get a better look at Missouri as opposed to looking back on a game that Tennessee was going to win easily. So we'll have the Vol report with Jacob and Cooper coming up later in the week, which makes me remind you to hit that like and subscribe button. Offensive line, A-. Why A-?
Outside of that 82-yard run, there weren't as many big runs there that the offensive line opened up holes for, and they did give up a sack. So because of that, you got to do A-. So, but They still played well enough.
No doubt. Defensive tackles, A. Edge rushers, A+. It just feels like they can flip any game. And I mean, Georgia included, that Tennessee's edge rushers and to some extent their interior defensive line, because they do get a push. It just feels like those four can win one game on their own. And maybe they have already, but they can win one game on their own at some point this season.
Yes, and I want to address this because people are going to question it because Tennessee didn't get a lot of I think they only got one sack in the game. But anybody who knows ball knows that depending on the scheme you're facing, you can't judge edge rushers by sacks. And UConn, again, runs the West Coast offense, Dave. You know as well as I do, the West Coast offense is about getting rid of the ball as quickly as possible on short hitch routes. You're not going to get a lot of sacks when you're facing a team that runs the West Coast offense. You just won't. And so they still found ways to make plays. Tyler Barron alone is why the edge rushers get an A+ and how he played on Saturday.
Well, and remember this too, that in the West Coast offense, you'll run a lot of running backs over in the slant. So there's probably times when some of those edge rushers have outside pass coverage responsibility as well. The Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety of great selection and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best CBD or Delta products. They've got the Big Orange Crunch. It is Hemp House Chat with 2 T's, Hemp House Chat with 2T's.com. Use the promo code HOOKED and you will get 10% off. All right, the rest of the report card as we go down. Caleb, where are we now? If you want to take over for me because my screen's not pulling up. Yes. Okay, we have linebackers A-, secondary B+.
Yes, linebackers A-. Aaron Beasley's pick 6 pushed him into an A- because they were about in the B+ range. And the reason was they stopped the run well. But again, UConn was able to move the ball with this offense through the air, and they picked Tennessee a little bit apart on a few drives. And that's the reason the secondary is a B+. Jalen McCullough's pick 6 and Jalen McCullough playing well actually throughout the game at safety was fine. Gabe Jeudy-Lally did force a fumble, but largely the cornerbacks gave up a lot of yards to the receivers. Now, maybe that was by design, but they did let Taquan Roberson work them down the field a few times.
Okay, now let me ask you this. We give the Torchbearer Awards. Who wins the awards on this Sunday? And if you had to pick one, who is the ultimate Torchbearer Award?
Before I get there, I just want to mention kicking game A, return game B. But yeah, okay.
And actually, before we get there too, or it can be part of it, who are your Torchbearers, first of all?
Okay, so my 5 torchbearers. And by the way, I had to do torchbearers and had to do some shout outs because I only do 5 each week. So number 5 was Nico Iamaleava. Came in, everybody was waiting for him to see how he would perform. I mean, that is a little bit of pressure when like everybody's waiting to see what you'll look like. You know what I mean? And he looked very comfortable through a touchdown pass. You're
trying to start trouble. I know what you're doing. Go ahead.
No, I'm not. Number 4, Jalen McCullough had a pick 6. I didn't have Gabe Jeudy-Lally in there despite forcing a turnover, the other secondary player, because again, I thought the cornerbacks gave up too many yards. So between Jeudy-Lally and McCullough got the nod. Number 3, Jalen Wright. I don't think that needs any explanation at all.
No.
Number 2, Joe Milton. So before you sit there and say I was starting stuff, I had Nico at 5. I did have Milton at 2. So both quarterbacks are torchbearers in this one. And then number 1, and this is, before I get there, I want to say I also left Aaron Beasley off, even though he had a pick 6, because I just felt that there weren't a lot of plays the linebackers made in pass coverage, so I couldn't give any of them a torchbearer for this one. But number 1, the easy player of the game was Tyler Barron. Tyler Barron was insanely good on Saturday against UConn.
Okay, so how can I best set this up? Who was the top ball torchbearer beside Tyler Barron? Do you want me to do that if you think he's easily number 1? Because we only have 4 options. I'll be honest with you. We have technological restrictions, Caleb.
No, unless you want to put Nico in there for fun, but like I think I don't know. I say Tyler Barron. Are there enough ball guys who vote on these things that would give it to a defensive end, Dave?
We've got a smart audience. That's the scary thing. So I don't really know, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put it together right now, start a poll, and we will do this as who was the top ball torchbearer beside Tyler Barron? And I'm going to go Nico, number 1. I'm going Joe, number 2. And then who do you want me to put on there? Let's get you in trouble. This is by Caleb Calhoun.
Jalen Wright.
Jalen Wright.
Jalen McCullough.
All right, Jalen Wright and Jalen McCullough. All right, it'll be up there here in just momentarily. Go to our YouTube channel. We'd love for you to vote. We've got some Spencer Riley coming up next, which you know we always love. And so who would you give it to? Who was number 2 on your list besides you said you had Tyler Barron number 1. Who would be number 2?
Number 2 would be Joe Milton. Joe Milton did everything right in this game. I mean, now again, The throws were so easy. I mean, it was like isn't it baffling, Dave, how 3 years into Heupel's system and receivers still get schemed wide open at times the way they do?
Yeah, but wasn't that I mean, that against a UConn is a little bit more of an athlete thing, right?
Not in that one. That was a complete busted coverage again, because Heupel schemes open busted coverages all the time.
No, I agree. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. In general, though, isn't it?
The Squirrel White one was an athlete one. The Squirrel White just outran the whole secondary after he caught the pass. Still doesn't rival Jason Witten outrunning an entire secondary in the Citrus Bowl in 2001. But
right, and I don't care if you're from the Big Ten or not. That's embarrassing. Okay,
yeah.
so who was the top ball torchbearer besides Tyler Barron? You want me to go Nico, Joe Milton, and Jalen McCullough, right?
Jalen. Oh wait, you only have 4 options, don't you?
Yeah, I just have 4. So I'm giving you Tyler Barron.
All right, so outside of Tyler Barron. So okay, yeah, Joe Milton, Jalen Wright, Nico, and Jalen McCullough. Those 4.
Yeah. All right. I got it up. Coming up, it'll be Spencer Riley. We love visiting with Spencer, and he's going to tell you why penalties continue to bite these Vols, and they got to do something about it. You got 2 minutes, and we're back with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. No, I don't look like a prince. Just wearing a black shirt. Hang tight.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
All right, in just a moment, we'll get to Spencer Riley. Always enjoyed that. The head coach of Jeff County and a VFL at center for the 1998 National Championship team. And if you'd like to, you can always order a book. It's right down there below in the description section. We'd love to get you one out. Some autographed by Fred White. We'll have some autographed by other players as well. So on the program today, we're going to visit with Spencer, as we mentioned, also get his thoughts. And also basketball set to open this season. Will the Vols or Lady Vols go further this year? And man, Joshua Dobbs, it's just hard not to feel good about him. He throws the game winner, and he admitted afterwards to not knowing some of the receivers' names. So, I mean, how do you even call a play? I mean, it's one thing to do the blue explode, separate 89, 62, 38, 49 on 2. I mean, it's one thing to do all those plays, but it's just another thing to say, hey, you, I need you to run a slant. What's your name again? Isn't that strange to you a little bit?
That is a little strange, but I mean, again, I don't even know if he showed, look, and we'll get to this, but dude's an aerospace engineer, and he showed why he was an aerospace engineer. He probably learned that playbook in like 2 days. And
it's one of those cool things. Let's bring Spencer Riley in here, who's the coach at
What's up, guys?
Hey, Spencer, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you? Man in black today, I see.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that. Maybe it was a Metallica concert or something. But
Maybe.
but let me ask you, how are things going on in Jeff County before we talk a little Vols?
Busy, man. Just busy time. We got a big win Friday night versus Cleveland, and we're hosting second round playoff here in Dumpling Valley versus the Bearden Bulldogs. So looking forward to a wild and rowdy crowd here in Dumpling Valley this weekend.
Yeah, always something shady about Bearden.
Well, it's you deal with what you got to deal with, and we just play a little football up here, and we enjoy it. We like it. We have a good time. We play with what we got.
They weren't quite preppy enough to be Farragut, but they weren't country enough to be Powell like me. So that was kind of somewhere in between. All right. Well, congratulations. Congratulations on the win. I know that it's one of those cases where you have to judge the opponent, but when you do that with your coach's eye and you look at it, did you think Tennessee played a pretty clean game, one they should be proud of?
Well, they did what they're supposed to. Let's call it, for first and foremost, as a coach, it's what you're going to sit here and say, hey, we did what we were supposed to. Went out, executed, performed, and got the win like you're supposed to. And you're able to get some more guys playing time. You're able to play some younger guys that hadn't had a bunch of snaps all year, which will help down the road. Not necessarily now, but it will help down the road. You kind of see what people do in game like situations, and they get to play in front of. I doubt there was 100,000 people there when in the second half, but I would say the crowd was okay. It's one of those things. As at the end of the day, if you come out of the ball game healthy with your guys you're counting on day in and day out, your starting guys, it was a successful ball game, and you got a big win.
Yeah, Spencer, one of the things I feel like you take, and you guys were very big about this on the 98 team, and it seems like Heupel insists this and his players too, which is it doesn't matter the opponent, even if it's UConn, it's one of your 12 opportunities to play football in the season, right?
You're only guaranteed so many, right? So you better take full advantage of your opportunities. And that's kind of how I approach it with my group. We're only guaranteed 10, right? We're fortunate enough this is going to be the 12th one we get to play this year. So, we're trying to figure it out as we go. You want to live to fight another day when you get to this, for us, this point in the season. And for Tennessee, hey, you want to get to where you're bowl eligible, playing in the best bowl that you can play in, and give you the most time for the bowl prep for your older guys, but also for your younger guys, because it's really like it's really like your first spring practice for those younger guys.
See that. And then your thoughts on Joe Milton. Again, I know the opponent, but I thought he played pretty well for the most part against Alabama too. And I feel like if he makes a bad throw, he doesn't get on himself anymore, where used to be a bad throw would turn into 6 or 7 bad throws.
Sure.
Do you see a different confidence level just in body language?
I just think he's just become a more mature football player. With more snaps he plays, he's just getting more experience. And you can't one throw is not going to kill you. If you don't complete the ball. Now, an interception may hurt you more so than an incompletion. So at the end of the day, as long as you still got the football at the end of the day, at the end of that play, you go back and play the next snap, and hey, you got to go, man. You got to go play the next play and forget about what's in the past, because there's nothing you can do to change it. So, yes. I really did thought Joe played, in the first half. I thought he played well, in the first, what I liked in the first quarter is he took the check down. He didn't try to force the ball in there. He took the check down to the back and did the things you're supposed to. Let those guys get the ball in their hands and let them make some yards after contact.
Yep, agreed.
Spencer, I know you're a former offensive lineman, but I know in general, I feel like linemen know just the whole culture of playing in the trenches on either side of the ball. I was talking in the last segment, the defensive line, I thought played well, even though it didn't show up on paper, because they got they didn't get a lot of sacks because UConn runs this West Coast offense where they have to get rid of the ball quickly. So you kind of had to more play smart and not, allow for big holes. Is that hard for edge rushers who just, they want to go take out the quarterback? Is that hard to have them play in control sometimes?
Well, I mean, it's about it's about being disciplined in your pass rush lanes, right? You got to stay in your pass rush lanes and try to create the pressure by taking your man into the quarterback and moving him off his spot to where the quarterback where he has to be able to throw it, moving one way or the other to create pressure. You know what I mean? If you get a pressure, sometimes the pressure is better than a sack. You know what I mean? Because you make a bad throw, they may throw an interception to us. You know what I mean? So. I think it's hard at times, but you got to be disciplined as a defensive lineman to do your part.
Spencer, let me ask you this. So this offensive line is without Darnell Wright, who was just phenomenal, needless to say. And then, so you have to replace him. You have to replace the Cooper Mays early, who is dealing with the abdominal issue. But this offensive line right now, as you see it with Cooper, if not healthy, then really close. How does it compare without a Darnell Wright as to last year? If you were to look at the two offensive lines and compare contrast.
Well, I didn't think we did something. I didn't think we blocked very well in some of the run game stuff on Saturday. Just from from what I just watched. Running through it and watching it because I didn't get to sit down and watch the game live. And so, it was one of them deals of, I'm like, man, that just don't look right. So, and how it was blocked and things like that. I think you could tell that Darnell wasn't in the ball game. You know what I mean? At times, we didn't solidify some of those things, and guys will get better with that with experience as they go. I think they're pretty good, you know what I mean? But Darnell makes them a lot better.
Yeah, he would have, definitely.
Yeah, so I kind of felt the same thing, Spencer, funny enough, after that one long run that broke with Jalen Wright. What did you think of – do you notice with Joe, getting back to Joe Milton a little bit, do you think there's a difference in maybe he's a little more comfortable because he's healthy? He had a banged-up right knee throughout the first few games, and we just thought, that only hampers his ability to run. But it seems like are there some quarterbacks like Joe who they get more accurate throwing the ball when they are able to run and use their legs too?
Well, some quarterbacks are a little different, you know what I mean? They like to get hit a little bit, you know what I mean? My kid don't like to get hit sometimes, you know what I mean? But he don't care to go put his shoulder down, to settle into the ball game. You know what I mean? But, we always try to settle ours down by getting a short throw in and getting ready to rock and roll. You know what I mean? But some quarterbacks like Joe, hey, they got a different mindset. That's fine. Hey, go in there and settle your pads and, make a throw and have a good time as you get your pads settled in to build that confidence as you move forward.
Visiting with Spencer Riley now. Welcome to the program. Hit that like and subscribe button if you don't mind. Certainly appreciate that. Not sure how much you've seen from Missouri, but when you go back,
they're athletic.
Yeah, they are. And Spencer, last year, a lot of people asked if Josh Heupel ran up the score. As a coach, I'm not going to ask you about your theory on running up the score or not, but if you do feel slighted like that, is it something your players get up for the next year?
Well, here's what I'll tell you. As a coach, my job is to help my guys be able to score points and help them be able to stop people. That's our job as coaches. And if your kids can't execute that, you didn't have a very good game plan. So, if you want to call it running up the score, call it running up the score, but it's their job to stop you. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I don't have a preference one way or the other. I've had the school run up on me. We didn't stop them. That's on us. I tell my kids that. You know what I mean? I'm sure people thought we ran the score up on some people this year. No, their job is to stop us. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you know what I mean? I'm not going to not let my kids, my 2s and 3s and 4s, not go out there and play football. I'm just not going to go out there and hand it off and run it. We're going to go out there and do what we do. That means we're going to throw it. We're going to throw it. But, they're still playing their 1s and 2s, so why not?
Yep. I got no issue with that whatsoever. Spencer, have a great week. Advance again, and we look forward to visiting with you each and every Monday.
Well, buddy, I look forward to it. Sorry I wasn't as prepared today, but we've been a little busy on our end up here, so trying to get work.
Spencer just pulled a sorry guys, I'm too busy winning over here.
Yeah, that's right.
Trying to keep it going, guys. Just want to be able to play next Monday, and then start prepping for next time.
Yeah,
so
we need that Jim Moore excuse. Playoffs.
Yeah, well, and I went and watched my nephew play. I hadn't got a chance to go watch him play this year, so this weekend. So it was good to get to go watch him play. He's at East Tennessee State, so I needed to go be a good uncle. I need to go be a good uncle and watch him play this year, so and get that handled. But
you're golden as always, Spencer. I appreciate you, buddy.
Guys, I appreciate you. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Have a great one.
If this is even in the conversation, this offensive line is even in the conversation of being as good as it was without Darnell Wright, don't we have to give Josh Heupel a little bit of credit for that and his offensive staff, his offensive line coach?
Well, I think partially, remember, we were very concerned about Gerald Mincey's play at the beginning of the going into the year, and he's pleasantly surprised us. He really hasn't been an issue at tackle at all, has he? And John Campbell Jr. is the type of left tackle that he's always going to be raw. He's just never going to be finesse. So you're going to get a mistake or two from him, but he's so physically gifted, you live with it. So I think and I feel like left tackle, you can sacrifice that, can't you? A left tackle, a mistake here or there if you're physically imposing and dominating the whole time.
Yeah, I think the big factor that we look back at last year is Darnell Wright and Will Anderson, Alabama. I think if there was one physical matchup that you highlight all of last year and you say that had the biggest impact on the college football SEC season, I think it was that one matchup. Because not only was Tennessee able to beat Will Anderson and hold him back, but they did so without help a lot of the times. And that, to me, allowed Tennessee to win. It kept Alabama from making some plays on defense. I think that was the best matchup. So if this offensive line is even in the conversation of being close to as good without Darnell Wright, I think it says something. How good is Spencer Riley each and every week? We love visiting with him. His Jeff County team plays on. Customer service still matters. State Farm agent Don Self and his team take customer service seriously. For well over 40 years, they built their business and reputation on taking care of their customers. Collegedale, Ooltewah, as well as the greater Chattanooga area. Don and his team pride themselves on making sure you and your family won't have any surprises at the time of the claim. So whether your need is for insurance for your home and family or for your small business, you have Don and his team to call if you're in that greater Chattanooga area. Customer service still matters. Don Self, your friendly neighborhood State Farm agent for the greater Chattanooga area. Now, this question, which I do want to get into, is Tennessee basketball. Tennessee basketball opens the season by some as a surefire Final Four participant, as others maybe not quite that good. But Tom Izzo threw his 2 cents in last week. Now we've got SEC power rankings coming up as well. Where do the Vols fit into the rest of the SEC? Hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Where do the Vols stand in the SEC power rankings? Up next off Doug Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor, that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Welcome back. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Right to it, as it's on offthehooksports.com. We take a look at the power rankings. Power rankings today are brought to you by our friends at the Hemp House. Hemp House Chat with 2 T's. Hemp House Chat with 2 T's. Use the promo code HOOKED. Get 10% off any of the CBD or Delta 9 products, and knowing that you're getting the best quality only. Best, you go to Hemp House Chat, pardon me, Hemp House Chat with 2 T's.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. All right, Caleb, let's go to our SEC power rankings, as the Vols were where last week, if you can remind our faithful viewers?
They were at number 6 last week.
Seems low to me, but if that's what you tell me, I'll roll with that. So where are the Vols this week, or do you want to start at the bottom and work your way
We'll count
up?
down. We'll show where the Vols are.
See, that's what he does. He teases it. He's a tease. All right, what do we got?
Hookers love to be teased. Okay, sorry.
I don't think they do. But I think they just soon be done, pay for it, feel ashamed to go their way.
All right, so
it's like
any
ripping
guesses?
a band off, I would think. I mean, I don't know.
Any guess who number 14 is? I think it's the most obvious one.
Oh,
Yeah, that stadium construction's really holding them back this year. I mean, they had a potential playoff team if there wasn't that stadium construction going on, I'm sure that's
no question. There's no question.
Yeah.
South Carolina comes in at 13. They had a potential college football playoff run going on until Shane Beamer took the head coaching job.
I actually dropped them after a win, funny enough, because they beat Jacksonville State by 10. It was a battle of Gamecocks. And they had I wondered why the line was so low. I thought South Carolina would cover, but that's where I should have listened to Vegas. They do something I didn't. So
let me hear the chat board. Where should the Vols be ranked? Because I'm going to go ahead and tell you that the Vols should be the 3rd highest ranked team in Caleb's power rankings. And he's just making a face at me. I can't tell if he's really taking that suggestion or not. So where should the Vols rank? I mean, we got to have Georgia and Alabama above them. I understand that. But why not power 3?
We'll get there. We're still cutting down.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because there's some other changes down below. I dropped Florida to 12 for obvious reasons.
12 on a Billy Napier bullet straight to the bottom of the SEC.
Yep. Billy Napier, you guys got to tune in Tuesday. He will be in our Football IQ segment. And Sam Pittman, who he lost to, would have been in it, but he luckily won. But Sam Pittman, I feel like the Football IQ segment is the Sam Pittman Invitational. But it's
you should be able to be on that segment though and still win. I've seen a lot of coaches do dumb things and win.
I do honorably stupid mentions. Okay, so Florida number 12, Mississippi State number 11. They had a chance to be bowl eligible with the win of Kentucky and just got blown out. They're probably going to finish 5-7 now. Arkansas moving up to number 10 though, because Sam Pittman was lucky enough to find a coach more incompetent than him. Man, I mean, isn't that always great when you can win because of that?
Yes, Sam Pittman needs to do some winning to keep his job, I'm told. Auburn, Kentucky, 9-8.
Yep, Auburn, Hugh Freeze keeps winning ugly, but he keeps winning. Kentucky shocked me. I thought Kentucky was going to have a November collapse with Mark Stoops, but blowing out Mississippi State on the road, I mean, you got to give them some credit for that. And number 7, Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher keeps hitting pars. I mean, he's losing who he should lose to, and he's beating who he should beat. And it's just, that's not what they paid him $10 million to do.
That's actually the worst. Like, if you bottomed out, you could get the money together and pay him. And it kind of felt like it was happening that way with Ed Orgeron. There was so much talent. Didn't they still win 8 or 9 games in his last year?
I think they stumbled to 6 in 2021 because remember they fired him midseason, and it just like messed everything up, and the team was ready to quit on him.
Seems like when they fired him, they still had an opportunity to win 9, but I could be wrong. So, but anyway, LSU at number 6, Missouri at number 5. So Caleb's telling us there's a top 5 matchup out on the incredibly pretentious plains of Missouri.
Yeah, and LSU clearly deserved to be number 6. I could have kept Missouri at number 4. I mean, coming off the bye, the way they played Georgia, it was really difficult for me to. Matter of fact, I think I did raise them up. But it was really difficult for me to move Tennessee ahead of them. But I did it only because of how Tennessee's looked the last 3 weeks, not necessarily how they looked last week. But Missouri did put up a fight against Georgia, so I just have to, we have to give them credit. And LSU, I mean, look, y'all got me. Maybe Brian Kelly's not as good as I thought. How do you beat Brian Kelly is a defensive coach, right? He was a defensive coach before anything else, and he's always hired good offensive coordinators. How does he not know about putting a linebacker in spy? Like,
I thought the Chip Kelly system was the offensive system.
The Chip Kelly system. I said Brian Kelly.
Oh, Brian Kelly. Oh, yeah. Well, he's terrible. You were way off base on that.
Well, you were on my side with that. What are you talking about?
I mean, you're on your own dinghy on that one. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn out in the middle of the ocean. The only people that can see you are those that have had LASIK and cataract surgery from Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Enjoy life better when you see better. Go to ccteyes.com. That's ccteyes.com. And at least throw me some sort of curve. I mean, give me something. Some surprise at the top of the rankings.
I mean,
Caleb.
I've got a couple. So we're going to start our debate now. I got Tennessee at 4. You have them at 3. I don't see how in any way you can put them ahead of Ole Miss right now. I don't. I mean, Ole Miss marched into Texas A&M and beat them, and Tennessee would not have beaten Texas A&M if that game was in College Station.
The one message on our message board, David, Napier overlooked the details. That never gets old to me. Because that's all that was said about him. If you'd have been at that SEC Media Days 2021 instead of 2022, you'd have walked away and said,
2022, you mean 2022 instead of 2023.
Right. Oh, yeah, you were at 20. Okay, if you were at 2020, the only thing that everybody said, that Billy Napier, well, he's got them details locked down.
And he has lost like 3 games this year because he overlooked details.
Yeah, I mean, that's the irony of it. If he just wasn't a good coach, that would be one thing. Mead Drinker says Sunbelt Billy, he was great there in Louisiana.
Dave, you make the case for Ole Miss.
Louisiana played last year, by the way.
Oh, it was horrible. Or 2 years ago. Dave, you got to make the case, though, for to be fair, at least Billy Napier was winning at Louisiana. Derek Dooley had a losing record at Louisiana, and Jimmy Haslam was like, that's my guy right there. And so,
City heating and air conditioning, fly-by-night HVAC company tell you that you need a new unit. So here's what they did for my mom, and they didn't know that it was my mom. But she's like, something's wrong with my heat there. So it's kicking in because it's cold over the weekend for the first time. And they got up there that day and didn't need a whole new unit, just needed the parts. So that's City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. And it's right there in North Knoxville, within 50 miles of Knoxville. They will care for you. So we got the top 10 locked out, or who we got left?
Oh, well, yeah. We got Tennessee is number 4. You still got to make the case on why Tennessee should be above Ole Miss, because you said they should be number 3. How and what stratosphere has Tennessee played better than Ole Miss this year?
Well, see, okay, mine would be graded off of I wouldn't count as much of a loss against Florida. It sounds like you're doing resume.
I'm not doing resume. I'm doing how they're playing at the moment too. And Ole Miss has done nothing to fall below Tennessee. They just beat Texas A&M on the road. I don't know if this Tennessee team could have done that.
Let me ask you this. If I make a call to Greg Sankey, who, by the way, says thank you for holding him in such high regard, But if I make the call to Greg Sankey and I was like, we need to settle this Caleb and Dave bet. So if you don't mind, can you open up the Georgia Dome and then can you put a couple of teams in there? Tennessee and Ole Miss. That's the two teams we'd like to put in there, Greg. And I asked him that, what's the spread?
Right now, I think the spread is Ole Miss by like half a point.
No way. Tennessee
would
be favored in that game.
I don't think right now they would be. I don't. It's close because of how well Tennessee's played the last 2 weeks. But I'm sorry. I still got to go with Ole Miss. They're 8-1. And their only loss is to Alabama. And they played Alabama as close as Tennessee played Alabama. So sorry, got to go Ole Miss. So number 2, here's my hot takes, Dave. And tell me if you agree with me. Georgia got their best win of the year last weekend by far against Missouri. And I dropped them in my SEC power rankings. If Alabama played Georgia on a neutral field right now, I think Alabama would be favored. I don't know what you think, but I think Alabama would be favored over Georgia right now on a neutral field, the way they're playing.
Wait, that's the argument that I just made for Tennessee and LSU, and you said look at their resume.
No, I said Tennessee. I said Ole Miss would be favored over Tennessee. I didn't say look at their resume. I said right now, Tennessee's playing great right now. So is Ole Miss. They're playing equally great.
Rocky Top Tom says Mississippi is, I'm going to put this on the board, is head and shoulders better than us. I'd say 11 points. What?
No, I wouldn't go 10 or 11. I would go Ole Miss would be favored by half a point. Ole Miss would be favored by half a point. They'd be favored by half a point.
Apparel Group, design, brand, market your way. Unique products to promote your business with unparalleled customer service. They've done work for me. I've been incredibly pleased. Go to apexapparelgroup.com. apexapparelgroup.com. If that's at the Mercedes-Benz Dome, Tennessee is a 3-point favorite.
No, it's Ole Miss is a half-point favorite. Now, my question, though, Georgia, Alabama, who would be favored Georgia, Alabama on a neutral field? Am I crazy for having Alabama with one loss ahead of Georgia?
No, you're crazy for the Ole Miss Vols one.
I'm not crazy for the Ole Miss Vols one. Vegas would favor Ole Miss right now. Now, I think Tennessee probably would win, but I don't have any evidence based on how they've played to favor up to this point to favor them right now. So it would be close to a pick'em. And honestly, Dave, here, let me give it to you this way. I think Tennessee Ole Miss might actually be a pick'em on a neutral field. But at that point, if it's a pick'em, you got to go resume because it's the only thing I got to rely on. But
everybody else agrees with me. You had one person that posted first that agreed with you.
Travis also thought Joe Milton was a Heisman contender at the beginning of the year. So,
well, he might have been, but there's so many representations because it's a down year in quarterbacks. I mean, you're down there.
Okay.
I mean, Michael
Penix, who is an amazing quarterback.
P.
We'll get to that in a second.
It's like there's no way not to get in trouble with his name. I would be so nervous if I were not on YouTube, to be honest.
Really wish he played for South Carolina. But anyways,
Michael Penix is very good.
Yes, but I would say that I'd have Ole Miss right now ahead of Tennessee. I would also have Alabama ahead of Georgia because the reason I have Alabama ahead of Georgia, by the way, for those questioning, yes, Georgia got a good win, but Alabama's one loss is to a top 10 team in non-conference play. Georgia hasn't played one top 10 team this year, period.
By the way, the message board continues to disagree. Joe is the Heisman in my heart. Travis says he still
does he have a 5-star heart?
He still could be. We're just talking all Tennessee needs. All Tennessee needs is him to throw for 400 yards, 450 yards, 500 yards the remaining 3 games of the season, and he can be an analyst. He can be one of the guys invited to the Heisman. Are you buying that?
I could possibly see it. It could be like a Johnny Manziel style November that he finished strong, but it's not happening.
Yep. All right. Week 10 recap. We do that right now as we look back on what affected the Vols in the week 10. And I think the biggest one is that Georgia managed to hang on. It to me had 2 major impacts on the way I think about the Vols. The Vols are going to face a tougher, more athletic team than they faced in Missouri last year, as long as they're not down emotionally. And the other thing that it reminded me of, until you find a way to win, you're more likely to find a way to lose in big games. So Tennessee has found a way to win in big games. Missouri has not. So if this thing's close late, I think it benefits the Vols.
I could see that. That's probably one of the big takeaways. The biggest one is with that, Georgia finally got a quality win. So you will see this when my top 10 comes, but Georgia has finally earned their way into my top 5 as an undefeated team. You know who hasn't earned their way into my top 5 as an undefeated team? Michigan, because Michigan still has played nothing but air. And like Michigan could have given all their signs to all their opponents and still would have won by as much as they won by. So it's you guys will notice that Michigan is below a bunch of one-loss teams. But yes, Georgia playing Missouri. I mean, Georgia played down to Missouri. We know that. And y'all, you know how I feel about Mike Bobo and Carson Beck. I don't think that's a good combination. And it's going to get exposed at some point.
And with the Michigan thing, I told you early on that they passed the eye test. I heard a stat, and I'll dig it up. They were like a crazy 33-18 before all this sign stealing. And since they're like 33-3.
That is kind of wild. Yeah. It's
I think maybe it's not just been a factor. I think it's been a monster factor because Michigan
also
couldn't get over the hump, and then boom, they got over the hump.
And this is why college football is the greatest sport in America, which is it's possible based on documents Michigan has that Ohio State is the one who leaked this story of the sign stealing because somebody illegally hacked Michigan computers, which would mean that somebody with Ohio State broke federal law so they could catch Michigan breaking an NCAA law. Isn't college football awesome, Dave?
Yeah. You've got Alabama, looks like the best team in college football. I wouldn't argue that. Texas survived.
On top of that, hot take, we'll get there. Jalen Milroe played his way into a Heisman contender this week. The Jalen Milroe we laughed at constantly is now a Heisman contender.
No, I agree. And it's what you do in November. Texas survives.
Yes, Texas survives. With Oklahoma losing twice, Texas is the Big 12's only hope now for the college football playoff. No team is undefeated, and they need some help. And they should have lost because Kansas State had them. But, hey, win over a top 25 team is win over a top 25 team, so they can't complain. I don't know if they'll last, though, because they still don't have Quinn Ewers.
Some other teams, Oklahoma, Clemson, UCLA, suffer upset losses, in Washington with a big road win at USC. I'm not even sure how big that is anymore, as bad as that Trojan defense is.
Well,
it's bigger than usual, but it's not like a monster. It would be at the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah, it would be. I thought, you know this, Dave. Pac-12 more than even the SEC, home field advantage is a big deal in the Pac-12 late in the year. I don't know why, but like it just those night games and those basketball scores, it just favors the home team. And I thought USC playing at home would have the advantage. That wasn't the case. That was a big win. Clemson, Dabo Swinney talk. Was that really an upset? Clemson upsetting Notre Dame? I know they won at home at 4-4, and Notre Dame was like 6-2, but that just felt like Clemson. That's one of those games where, like, remember, Dave, back in the day when Tennessee would they'd be barely ranked and facing a top 15 South Carolina team or something, and it's like, yeah, but you knew Tennessee was going to win.
That was the one I mentioned last week that I felt super good about, but that's why I don't gamble. So, but that's the one that I was like, man, he's rallying the troops in that whole, if you can try to be the coach press conference, and usually they'll respond well for one game after that. And then you've got Oregon State could stop the Oregon-Washington rematch. Georgia finally picking up a quality win. So beating Missouri at Missouri, we both agree is a quality win. What's their second most impressive win? If you take a peek at that.
Kentucky.
I mean, really. The Big Ten, Big Three stay alive in college football. The Big Ten might get 3 teams into the college football playoff, but I just don't think they're going to allow that politically.
What happens, Dave, though, and here's where it gets crazy. Penn State plays Michigan this week. What happens if Penn State beats Michigan and then Michigan beats Ohio State and they all have 3 losses? It's a 3-way tie for the East and they all beat each other. That you can't even determine who goes and plays for the Big Ten title at that point. And what do you do? That's going to be brutal to figure out, honestly.
And then on the takeaways, college football Heisman race, Michael Penix at number 1, Bo Nix. It's hard for me to say that, but it's true. Number 2, Jordan Travis. Number 3, Ollie Gordon II. Jalen Milroe skyrocketing. He's at number 5. He wasn't even on this list a week ago. And what the college football playoff should look like for Caleb Calhoun: Ohio State 1, Washington 2, Florida State 3, Georgia 4, Oregon 5, Texas 6, Alabama 7, Ole Miss 8, Penn State 9, Michigan 10. Of those 10, all still have the ability to control their own destiny, right? I mean, if they win out, they're going to make it, right?
All of them. Well, no, Texas won't make it with a loss. Because Texas doesn't play any of the undefeated teams. They need some other teams to lose. But everybody below Texas, and then Ole Miss too. Ole Miss doesn't control their own destiny either, because Ole Miss isn't going to win the West. There's no way Alabama's not going to the SEC title game now. So Ole Miss and Texas don't. And then there's one more one-loss team, which is Louisville at number 11. They actually control their destiny more than Ole Miss or Texas do, because Louisville will play Florida State if they win out, which is a big deal. So I think, taking that into account, I think Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is going to fall eventually, but I do think that right now I guess it's safe to say there are 9 teams that control their own destiny, or there are 18. No, there are 9 teams that control their own destiny, and 11 one-loss or undefeated teams right now. Depending on how things shake out, Dave, this week or so, we might be very close to a conversation of a 2-loss team in the playoff race. We're not far off from that.
No, I think you're going to be. When they expand to 12, I think you're going to have talk of a 3-loss team.
Oh, yeah, when they go to 12. But I'm talking about this year. We're close to a conversation of a 2-loss, which, by the way,
well, I mean, we had that conversation last year, though. Because, Tennessee was in the conversation. They were going to pass Alabama. But they didn't have... But they weren't in the conversation after they lost to South Carolina. It was over after they lost to South Carolina. That was their second loss. I'm talking about a team with 2 losses. Well, how many losses did Alabama have when they finished 5th?
Alabama had 2 losses also, but
so you can be in the conversation with 2 losses.
Yes, and Nick Saban thinks they should have gotten in because of Vegas, because that's Nick Saban being Nick Saban. But it was close. There were a lot of, but it hasn't happened yet. We haven't seen a 2-loss team squeak into the playoff. Meanwhile, when you had the BCS, somehow LSU got in with 2 losses in 2007, because remember Les Miles' selling point, Dave? He said, we haven't lost to anybody in regulation this year because both their losses were into overtime. And the voters were like, well, that makes sense to me. Let's put them in.
I would hope not. Portions of the program brought to you by Harold Group Security Solutions, leadership experience, a specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques, making your children safer, one school at a time. Go to Harold GRP, haroldgrp.com to learn more. We're in private schools now, want to get into public schools, so let's make that push. We're working on making legislative change. Harold Group Security Solutions, mention that to your school administrator. And as far as Caleb, when we look at the recap from the weekend, if there's one story that most affects Tennessee, it's Georgia, Missouri, right? Because if Georgia loses, then we're having a way different conversation. So that's number 1. What else did you learn from what's number 2 for you? What did you learn from the weekend that most affects Tennessee? And mine's a weird one, but it is Florida just being atrocious, and how the voters will take that into play. So if there is somehow, some way Tennessee works themselves into that conversation, you're going to look back at that Florida loss and go, that's just not bad. That's really bad.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that. I got a third one, though, Dave, and this is a big one, because this is okay. And it goes to the college football playoff talk, because we talked about a 2-loss team flirting. You know what Tennessee can have a real problem with? If Tennessee is going to win the East, which they have to do to get a college football playoff hope, they need Ole Miss to beat Georgia this week, right?
Right.
If Ole Miss beats Georgia, and then Tennessee beats Georgia the next week, and say Tennessee goes and wins the East, they'll play, and say they play Alabama in an SEC title game rematch and win. And Tennessee wins the SEC title and is sitting at 11-2. Ole Miss is sitting at 11-1. And Ole Miss beat Georgia on the road where Tennessee beat Georgia at home. There's a really good chance the college football playoff voters would say, even though Tennessee won the SEC, Ole Miss has the better resume. They should get in. They did that. Now I will say brand helps. I do believe, and I don't know if you think this, I think voters care about brand a little bit. They won't admit it, but they take brand into account, don't they? A lot of times.
Yeah. I think you take an 11-1 SEC, to take it to extremes. All right. An 11-1 SEC loser, Alabama, over an 11-1 SEC loser, South Carolina. No offense, South Carolina, or Vanderbilt. I think you would probably you'd probably rather take. That is really extreme. There's nothing extreme about Sports Treasures except for the extreme amount of stuff that you get to look at. Over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Go to facebook.com and look for Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN, and you can follow them as they go. And when they release stuff, a lot of times fall stuff, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. Who didn't think that Joshua Dobbs wouldn't be a positive story when he moved teams? I thought he'd be a positive story just because in general, he's a positive story. But Caleb Calhoun talked about how his newest destination was a perfect one for him. And Caleb, if you can kind of look back at that, and then what he did on a Sunday was absolutely fantastic, maybe even unprecedented in the modern era of NFL football. He didn't know some of his receivers' names. He hadn't been to a single practice, and he went out there and did what, Caleb?
Josh Dobbs went out there and threw a game-winning led a game-winning touchdown drive, threw a game-winning touchdown pass to beat the Falcons on Sunday in what is honestly one of the most impressive performances, I'm just going to say it, in the history of the NFL for a quarterback. So let's break down what happened. Arizona traded Josh Dobbs middle of last week. I said he's going to a great situation because Kirk Cousins was hurt and Arizona actually has good talent and good coaching. Arizona traded Josh. Then Arizona decided they weren't going to start Kyler Murray, which made it very clear to me the reason they traded Josh Dobbs is they were worried he was going to win them too many games down the stretch to knock them out of the number one pick. But we didn't expect Josh Dobbs.
It was almost like Major League. You remember Major League? They were dying to lose. So when Dobbs got picked there, I thought to myself, well, if they want to make anything out of what they've got going this year, that's good. But then when they showed they just truly wanted to tank. By the way, the guy they've got now, Kyler Murray, has it in his contract that he has to watch film for 2 hours a day. That the video gaming can't count as a film. Right. So Joshua Dobbs, I thought there might be a chance he would go there and they'd say, hey, this is our guy. We're not that bad. But they didn't do that. They didn't want to do that. He was too good. They wanted to lose games.
Yeah, exactly. And he was playing with nothing around him because they wanted to lose. So they sent him to Minnesota middle of the week. I say good situation. We didn't expect him to start this week because he gets there, Dave. He's traded on a Tuesday. He probably isn't in Minnesota till a Thursday, right? Like, you got to fly to Minnesota. So he's probably not there till a Thursday. He probably gets the playbook on that Thursday. You know they're going to start Jaron Hall on Sunday. So the whole concept is, all right, let Josh Dobbs run the playbook for a week, and then we can start him. Jaron Hall gets hurt. Josh Dobbs is thrown in an impossible situation. Doesn't know his receivers' names. Maybe had looked at the playbook had 3 to 4 days to look at the playbook. Goes out there, completes 20 or 30 passes for 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Also runs it 7 times for 66 yards and a touchdown. There was a game-winning touchdown pass. Here's what this tells me more than anything. Josh Dobbs got that playbook and he studied it relentlessly. I think there's an issue nowadays, Dave, with a lot of quarterbacks who don't study film in the playbooks the way they should, like the Peyton Manning of 8 hours. It's very clear Josh Dobbs was knee-deep buried in that playbook the minute he got it on Thursday or whatever.
Totally agree.
And how can you not respect a guy with that type of – he has baseline arm strength. He's athletic, which is an extra bonus. He's smart, and he's got a work ethic that I I think he's got an unrivaled work ethic in the NFL.
Let's take out all the guys that contributed to a 98 national championship, which the last one is probably Travis Stevens in 2001. A guy that played a major part in 98. And so Travis Stevens is probably the last one who had a major effect on that team. Is that fair? So let's say who's the most beloved player since 2002, or who should be? Is it Josh Dobbs? I want to ask you on the message board. Fill it out, because who is your favorite? I will say that mine's obviously Eric Berry, okay, because I didn't cover a mature individual like him anywhere close to that. But I'll give you a couple of surprise ones. Alvin Kamara always had a smile on his face, was the opposite of a transfer type guy that usually had an attitude. So they're right up there. But as far as most beloved Vol, who do you think's out there, Caleb Calhoun? Because
Eric Berry's a good one. It's weird because I go back to him, but I will say, because it was the 2002 era, because he technically didn't play on the 98 national title team, I still put John Henderson in there in 2001. Because he wasn't on the 98 team. And Henderson, unlike Berry, did come back for a senior season and threw away millions of dollars to come back because he just wanted to play at Tennessee for another year. And I'm not knocking Berry on that. Go get your money. And I know there were some family financial situations at the time for Eric Berry that he had to deal with. So I have no problems with him going to the NFL. But I'm saying that is an extra bonus for a John Henderson to me.
I think he was also in a hurry to start some fundraising things, which he has done in both Kansas City and the Chattanooga area. Sorry, not the Chattanooga area, the Griffin, Georgia area. So he's got a couple of parks there for kids. I think there's a lot of things he wanted to do. I'm not familiar with the possible family financial issues, but I do think it was time for him to go. He didn't need a risk with the injuries he already had, which was a torn ACL, to think about going to the NFL.
Yeah. I think his parents had gotten wrecked by the 08 crash, the 08 recession, where they were one of many, many victims. There's no shame in that. There were a lot of victims from that 2008 crash. And but yeah, Eric Berry still is very high up. Josh Dobbs is there though. Like Josh Dobbs is, and I think Josh Dobbs has become more beloved over time because I think his NFL story is so great, Dave. Think about it. We're talking about a guy who was a 6-7-year journeyman. Now, honestly, if you think about it, if you're a journeyman quarterback in the NFL, it's not a bad job. You're just taking NFL money. You know what I mean? You're just
not a bad
job. Yeah. But the thing that you realize with Josh Dobbs is he willingly accepted his role as a journeyman and he worked his tail off, and he clearly was ready to go whenever his number was called. He's won a game with 2 different teams this year as a starter. He has started for 4 different teams within a year now. And this is a guy, again, I call him the anti-Tyler Bray, who I thought had the most raw, best physical tools of anybody ever coming out of Tennessee to play quarterback in the NFL, and just did not care. Also a journeyman. Tyler Bray was a journeyman because he didn't care. Dobbs was a journeyman because Dobbs is a guy, Dave, you just want on your team, don't you? Even if he's a backup.
Okay, now we got some votes on our. Yes, I vote for you. I think that's why he's gotten so many second chances, is he's a positive influence on the locker room. Rocky Top Tom says my most beloved Vol 100% is Al Wilson. Well, that's why he's on the front of my book. But
oh my gosh, did you guys not listen to the non-98 part? Like
nobody that participated to the 98 national championship. Then the next one, Vol's time. I love you, but you said Peerless Price.
Again, 98.
Yes, I'd say you contributed. But then Cody Hayes brings up the best point. And he says there's obviously a reason that he's been all around the NFL. Some places more than once. He's definitely a positive influence to have around your organization. So you call people and you're a GM and you're like, we'd like to bring this guy in, but we don't want him to create any sort of waves because he's the quarterback. And you might even be saying he's one of 2 things. He's going to sit behind this dude, or he's going to hopefully lose enough games for us to get Caleb Williams. So either or, whichever the case may be, he's put into a difficult situation. But you know what every GM says that you call? He'll do it for you. He is absolutely your guy, a team guy. He'll do whatever you need, except for lose on purpose, which is, I think, is what the Cardinals want him to do.
Yeah, Josh Dobbs is not a team guy because he didn't lose guys. I mean, and I think that's actually helped him more in the NFL because, Dave, I got to be honest with you. I don't think Butch. I don't. Not only was he held back by playing in Butch Jones's system for a long time, but I think he was held back in the sense of you talk about this. Coaches have to be careful about who they do or don't talk up to NFL scouts and GMs, right? And they have to play that right. Do you have any doubt in your mind that Butch Jones did not play that right at all, and that scouts and GMs have no faith in what he said? Period. End of story. I'm pretty sure scouts. Yeah. So when Butch Jones is talking up Josh Dobbs, I'm sure scouts and GMs did not take that into consideration at all. They're like, oh, he's just a liar. And so I think that hurt him long term too.
Rocky Top Tom playing the game right. We appreciate that. He says,
no, it's post 98.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he's playing it righter than completely wrong. Okay. My most beloved on 98 Vol is Hank Laracella. No, it's
does Rocky Top Tom believe the 21st century exists?
No. So here we go. This is your 5. We're going to leave you with Tommy Johnson says Eric Berry, Josh Dobbs, Alvin Kamara, Jawan Jennings, A.J. Johnson. Is that the top 5 off the top of your head? Because I might just write that for tomorrow.
I'd sub out Kamara for John Henderson. And I think we're forgetting John Henderson in so many ways. He is in a tier with Eric Berry and Steve DeLong, a 2-time All-American who won the Outland. So I would and he came back for his senior year. And I love Alvin Kamara. But Alvin Kamara's had some off-field antics that make me not like him as much. Okay, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't start fights with people in elevators in Las Vegas. That's just that's not okay to me.
Fair enough. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Hit like and subscribe.
We got to talk some basketball.
Yeah. Oh, hoops. That's absolutely right. All right. So Tennessee basketball. When you look at the Vols, Lady Vols, which team do you think should scare their individual sport more at this point?
So Tennessee men open the season tonight against Tennessee Tech at 6:30. Lady Vols open the season tomorrow night. I believe it's Florida A&M. Look, it shouldn't be this way, but it's not tomorrow night. Excuse me. I think it's like Wednesday, or something like that. But no, it is tomorrow. Okay, so I think the men should be scarier this year, honestly. I think Rick Barnes has reshuffled his personnel. Zakai Ziegler getting healthy will be a huge deal. I think this is going to be it's not the best Tennessee team that Rick Barnes has had. That best team was the one that had Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield and Jordan Bone and all those guys. But it's the one that's best positioned to make a run in the NCAA tournament. And Dave, you know this as well as I do, and college basketball fans need to learn this. There is a difference between being the best team and being the best position to make a deep run in March. Because March is not about who the best team is. It's about who's got the best shooters.
True. I'll say this. This is very difficult for me because I feel like in different ways, both teams' talent or hamstrung. Hendon Hooker should have been on that list, by the way, of most beloved Vols of the most recent generation. But I would say I think they're both hamstrung by their coaching. And I think it's Tennessee's men's basketball team when they get in the tournament. I think it's the Lady Vols. It's kind of sort of throughout, but sometimes it manifests itself in the tournament. I'll say this. If what you believe, and I'm trusting you on this assumption, if what you believe on Rick Barnes, and you pretty much got me won over, so we're at the point where we've got to make preseason picks. So let's do it this way. That Rick Barnes is willing to play a little bit different and a little faster pace and do some different things. I'll say the scarier 2 teams, the teams that will go deepest in the NCAA tournament of the 2 will be the men. I think the men go deeper. I think they're an Elite 8 type of run. I think the ladies are a Sweet 16 type of run. You keep up the ladies closer than me, and we'll have extended lady coverage as we go on with the Lady Vols. But your thoughts, who goes deeper in the NCAA tournament? Who's a tougher out when they show up on your bracket?
I'm totally with you. It's the men because of Rick Barnes changing up his system. I think Kelly Harper is still far too often and to a fault committed to and this is not a knock on Pat Summitt. This is the way the game should have been played in the 90s, okay, in the 2000s. But she's still committed to the Pat Summitt system, which is length. She wants she wants 2 or 3 6'3", 6'5" players, which men's would be like 6'11", 7'1". I'm talking about out there, and I don't think for former guard, I don't think she is as committed to the guard play the way she needs to be. Now, Jordan Horston, I didn't think was a good fit for Kelly Harper's system, and Jordan Horston is gone now. That's not a knock on Jordan Horston. I just think that Jordan Horston's a slasher, and Kelly Harper does not like slashers. She's basically the best fit for like if John Calipari coached women's basketball. You know, the guard that drives to the basket and kicks it out every time, the dribble drive.
Right.
Yeah, and that's not what Kelly Harper does. So I'm going to be fair this year and see if Harper does play a little bit of inside out basketball that does work for Tennessee. But I just think I believe Rick Barnes has shown a change in philosophy. I do. I think the way he's put his team together really suggests to me that he is willing to play smaller. It's somewhat begrudgingly. In his press conference, he's like, this is the best shooting team we have. We still got to work on our defense. And you can tell it's like, they're still like, oh, work on your defense or something like that. But I do think Rick Barnes is willing to play small. And the telling stat to me is that Zakai Ziegler and Santiago Vescovi have been out during these exhibition games. And Rick Barnes is still playing 4 guards or 4 wing players, 4 guard/wing players on the court, which is 1 true post player. That wasn't the case in years past. I mean, in 2018, 2019, which is the best team Barnes ever coached, maybe the most talented team in Tennessee basketball history that year, Rick Barnes was running Grant Williams, Kyle Alexander, and Admiral Schofield. And Admiral Schofield on any other team would have been a power forward at 6'6", like 260. And he was playing the wing at Tennessee. And so I don't think Barnes is going to be doing that anymore. He's got Josiah Jordan-James playing the post more. And as you know, Dave, you see Josiah, he's definitely a wing build. Skinnier, control, things like that. And Barnes has him playing the post. And I think, look, that's a big telling point. I don't know if Harper has committed to a change in philosophy the way she should have.
Yep. We'll see. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports with you weekdays, 10 a.m. We certainly appreciate it. Remind you that portions of the program brought to you by Tennessee Cider Company, the original hard cider of the Smoky Mountains. Use the promo code HAT to receive some free swag with your order. Available most anywhere in the U.S. That's sports. That's again, use the promo code HAT at tncidercompany.com. And Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking forward to affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals? A Tennessee tradition. Rick Terry Jewelry.com. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.